Xinjiang in the 1930s and 40s was probably 70 to 80% Uyghur. There were Han people there, there have been Han people there for a very long time, but from 1949 onwards the position has changed quite dramatically. Partly it was as a result of people who had been left behind as part of the Chinese Communist armies that took control in 1949. Partly it's been migration since, but the current position is that approximately 16 million people living in Xinjiang, something like 8 million are Uyghurs. So it's roughly half and half. There's a certain difficulty about these figures because they are politically sensitive. And in a way, that 50-50 figure gives a rather misleading impression of Xinjiang. Because if you go to the capital, Urumqi, you find it to be a predominantly Han city, although there are areas in it which are completely Uyghur. And the same is true of other areas in northern Xinjiang. If you go to southern Xinjiang, for example, Kashgar, Yarkand, Khotan, the cities at the south of the Taklamakan Desert, these areas are almost entirely Uyghur. There are Han people there, there are Han government officials, but they are predominantly Uyghur areas. So the idea that it's half and half is true, but it doesn't work for the whole of the region. There's been a deliberate migration policy. In the 1950s, it was largely to do with the military. Having taken control of Xinjiang, the People's Liberation Army needed to garrison it. So the People's Liberation Army was predominantly Han, so they took control of the region and they settled. People settled, they had their families there, they had children there. During the 1950s and 1960s, particularly in the period towards the end of the Cultural Revolution, there was an attempt to resettle Red Guards in the countryside, partly to break up the Red Guard movement that had been developed in the Cultural Revolution, partly the idea that the borderlands needed resettling, and a lot of Red Guards, former Red Guards, were sent from eastern China, China proper, into the western regions, including Xinjiang. The more problematic part of migration is that Xinjiang, like Qinghai and other areas, has a great many prisons and prison camps. And so a lot of people convicted of serious crimes in eastern China have been sent to prison camps in Xinjiang. And when their term of imprisonment has come to an end, they've settled in that area. And there's a great deal of resentment at the fact that Xinjiang is seen as a dumping ground for prisoners and criminals from the rest of China. The position in the more recent past is that although there's been an encouragement of migration by the state, there's also been migration because of the economic opportunities that are perceived in Xinjiang. So if you travel to Xinjiang, for example, if you go on the train that goes directly from Shanghai to Urumqi, you'll find a lot of people who are going, Han people who are going from Shanghai out to Xinjiang to do business. Some of them are settling, others only spend a short time there and go back. So there's planned resettlement and there's economic migration. If you look at it on the general level, the Han are in charge. It's rather different in the more far-flung regions such as Kashgar in the southwest and Wulja, Yining as the Chinese call it, in the northwest. There you can detect a great deal of tension between the Han and the Uyghurs. The Han are really thought of and treated as colonists. They don't fit into local society, and in fact you can often see a dual economy, one economy run by the Uyghurs and one run by the Han Chinese. The government structure is quite interesting because it's formally regarded as an Uyghur autonomous region. They have to have Uyghurs in the government. So for example, the governor of Xinjiang is an Uyghur, but the party's secretary is a Han, Chinese, Hmong, and nobody is under any illusions. The party has the upper hand, and it's one they're trying to run Xinjiang, although formally there is an Uyghur provincial governor. I think on certain key issues like marriage, there tends to be a very clear division between the communities. There's an enormous pressure on Uyghurs to marry within the community. There are logical reasons for this. The language. Most Uyghurs speak Uyghur as their first language, and if they know Chinese well at all, they've learnt it at school. Most Han Chinese in Xinjiang, as far as I can tell, don't have very high-level Uyghur language, and even those who do have learnt it as a second language. Uyghur religious life centres on the mosque primarily, although a lot of people seem to have a greater attachment to the mazars, the tombs of Sufi sheikhs, the saints of the Sufi orders. The rules about praying are the same as they would be in, say, Pakistan or in Central Asia. Prohibitions on food are the same as in Islam worldwide. So it looks very similar to Central Asian or Pakistani Islam. The mosques mostly look like mosques that you would find in Uzbekistan or Pakistan. It is usually considered that Islam in Xinjiang is rather easier than Islam in a lot of other parts of the world. It's got a lighter touch, and this is put down to the nomadic Central Asian tradition. It's certainly an important part of people's lives. It's the central part of people's lives, the ability to go to the mosque. And although it's been discouraged over the last 30 or 40 years, it's quite clear that Islamic law plays a great part in people's lives, and marriages and other social arrangements are often done in consultation with Islamic jurists. Han people really do not understand a great deal about Islam in China. And you have to remember that there are Muslims in pretty well every part of China, in Beijing, small towns around eastern China. So they probably will be in contact with Muslims at some point in their lives. They don't really have any great understanding of it. Their images of Islam are, on the whole, fairly negative. It's seen as a strange and alien religion. It seems un-Chinese to them. Has this changed since 2001, the attacks on the World Trade Center and the Pentagon? Probably not a great deal, although there's been a lot of publication since then with fairly anti-Islamic slant to it. Islam has been associated in China with terrorism, as indeed it has been in the West, and so in many ways I think what you can say is it's reinforced the negative view of Islam that Han Chinese have.